Welcome to Baby Boomer Tales. My name is Jim. You can find us at babyboomertales.com. Once you've arrived, there are links to places where you can access our podcast, pictures of the place that I speak about so much. And yes, there's a picture of me when I was about 5 years old, sitting on my donkey Jenny. Thank you for riding along today. You're always welcome here. There's one piece of business I need to take care of real quickly, and that is our podcast is released every Wednesday morning at 3 a.m. and most places get it right in that time frame pretty quickly. But I've been having a couple issues. One is with our webpage. There's a page there that gives all of our podcasts. You can scroll down and access the podcasts. Well, it's been coming on a couple hours, 2-3 hours later. And Google Podcasts, for whatever reason, is not publishing it on Wednesday morning. I've been having some problems with it going clear into Thursday afternoon or so. It says it's there, but it doesn't show up. I've been in contact with them, and they've given me tools to correct it, but it doesn't seem to correct it. So we're working on that. Usually later in the week, by Thursday afternoon or Friday, you can get the Google Podcast. But everywhere else, Wednesday morning, you can find us on many, many avenues to listen to our podcast. So thank you for bearing with me on that if Google Podcast is your preferred method. When it was Google Play, I had no problem whatsoever. So I don't know if it's them or me, but I do know we have a little bit of a problem there. So onward and upward. In the early 1960s, one day a monumental thing happened in town. That is, the Conoco gas station put up a brand new sign. It was no ordinary sign. Now, this sign was a vertical sign, and there were big boxes, big white boxes, and each box was about 6 foot by 6 foot, about a foot deep, and it was sitting out on the street so you could see both sides of the box. So on one side there was a C, on the other side there was a C. Next one down, one side was an O and the other side was an O. So this sign was at least 50 to 60 feet tall. Each one of these boxes spelled out CONOCO in a vertical fashion so you could see it from one end of town to the other end. So when you drove into town, coming up over the viaduct and turning left on a main street there, you could see that Conoco station that was on the west end of town, clear from the east end of town. Well, it didn't take very long, and the Texaco station put one up almost identical. The main difference, they each had those 6 foot by 6 foot boxes that had letters, and the only difference between one saying Conoco and one saying Texaco, they were both 50, 60 feet tall. The base of it, the last letter in it, was about 15 feet tall and went up from there. The Conocos had their supports on the top of the letter, and the Texaco, their support was on the bottom of the letter. But besides that, the boxes were white, the letters were red. They were both almost identically the same height, about 4 or 5-story building tall. It was amazing. There was nothing taller than that in the county besides the mountains than those two signs. Well, shortly after the Texaco put theirs up, the Standard station on the east end of town, right when you're crossing that viaduct, turning into town, they put one up, but it was horizontal. It was every bit as big, it just didn't go vertical, it went horizontal. Next thing you know, the Enco put one up. It was a horizontal sign. And then the Chevron put one up, and it was a horizontal sign. And the letters just stood there, not in a box, and they had the Chevron logo. Well, it wasn't long, and the Phillips 66 put a sign up, and they were on the east end of town. So the Standard and the Phillips were trying to get your gas business before you even could see that Conoco station down there. And I believe all the Phillips was that big logo of theirs. Then the last holdout, and he did do it, Old Pete, down there at the Mobil, the last gas station in town before he went over the hill and left the city limits, up went a tall Mobil sign. And it just said Mobil on one piece, and all these things lit up at night. It was really quite striking, and it's the only place I saw it for a while was there in my old hometown. The only station didn't really have that. As you would dip over the hill, is going towards the road that would take you to the national park. There's a little bitty independent gas station down there. I think we called her K-Woods. And they barely had a sign at all. But they did have the first self-service gas station. And if you needed gas at 12:30 at night, you can go in there and stick a dollar bill in this machine and it kind of eat it. Kind of like the old change machines. Get a buck's worth of gas there at K-Woods. Shoot, even old Jack at the Sinclair put up a taller sign. Those signs were like a beacon saying we are open for business in this town and we are competing for your business. We'll do whatever it takes for your business. Now for the top 10 songs 55 years ago. That is the top 10 pop songs this week in 1966. Number 10, Somewhere My Love, Ray Conniff and the Singers. Number 9, Mother's Little Helper, the Rolling Stones. Number 8, Sweet Pea, Tommy Roe. Number 7, Summer in the City, The Lovin' Spoonful. Number 6, Hungry, Paul Revere and the Raiders. Number 5, I Saw Her Again, the Mamas and the Papas. Number 4, by Crispin St. Peters, the Pied Piper. Number 3, by Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs, Little Red Riding Hood. Number 2, Hanky Panky, by Tommy James and the Shondells. And the number 1 song this week, 55 years ago, by the Troggs, Wild Thing. You make my heart sing. I love you. Those Troggs were pretty cool. Other signs that were iconic in the 60s while I was growing up in that little town. A town that Main Street was 4 lanes wide. Speed limit was 30 miles an hour. But old Vern, the town marshal, would have to sit there and try to keep them down at that because people want to drive much faster through town. It didn't matter if we had wonderful lit up signs that were 5 stories high or not. But the Thunderbird Motel, big motel sign with a neon Thunderbird that lit up in several colors. The Trail Riders Motel, very much an iconic sign that's there today. It's changed a little over the years, but not much. Guy riding a horse, all in neon. And the one sign that will always be the most famous sign in the history of that town was the Trading Post sign. That old cowboy walking down the street, decked out in boots and hats and Levi jeans, snap-up shirt, inviting you to come on in, shop a spell. It's one of the best signs I've ever seen in my life, guaranteed. In the 1980s, the town created a sign code. All of a sudden gone were the tall oil company signs, trying to entice you into going to Alvy's, Conoco, or the Texaco, Dave's Chevron, Rex's 66, or Jack Sinclair. I'm not sure it ever really affected Pete one little bit, one way or the other. Now the town planted trees up and down on the sidewalks there, and the trees started to get larger and larger and started to cover up the smaller signs. It got so bad one time Ralph down there at the Long Branch took a saw out and cut the tree down. The local newspaper captured a picture of him holding a branch and a saw, proclaiming a short but well-deserved victory for the local merchants in that town. You see, my hometown, the main street was not one of those quaint little walk down, stroll down, quiet little street with nice little shops. It was right on a major U.S. highway in the middle of a tourist area where people were coming and going, and we were just a blip on the screen of where they were headed. My town had the school and the business, but it really didn't have the tourism. I think that's changed now as time has gone on. There's golf courses and ski areas and all this stuff around there anymore that we really didn't have in the 60s and 70s. They call it progress, and a lot of it is. And I don't care if your gas station sign is 100 feet tall or 15 feet tall. It really doesn't matter to me. I understand why they did it. For when you come up the hill and cross the river and get up on the viaduct, start going from going north to going west, and there's the town laid out before you for the next 6 blocks. If you see that Conoco sign down there 5 blocks away, you're likely to go on down there and bypass 4 or 5 other gas stations. Just the way it is. I think it was probably pretty good advertising. The signs probably paid for themselves. I tried to find a picture of those signs, and there's one picture out there that shows Main Street and shows most of those, and that's how I could remember the Enco station. I've forgotten all about that service station being at that vacant lot. I don't know if it's vacant anymore, but after they left town, it was vacant for years. So that picture helped me as I was creating this podcast today. But there were so many other signs that we didn't talk about, like Payne's Cafe and the QZ Motel, Columbine Cafe, the Gamble's Store, and the drugstore. There's one thing every small town in America has in common, and that is there are hardware stores and restaurants and grocery stores and parks and churches and liquor stores and clothing stores and drug stores and schools and gas stations and doctors and dentists and mechanics and realtors and wonderful people going about their everyday lives, trying to make a living, trying to raise their families, trying to make it the best way they know how. Now, some of those small towns may not have some of that stuff listed. Some small towns may have more. So we have to have signs in that little town. We have to let somebody somewhere that's driving through know where we are and who we are. You can't just have the little old sign painted on your window and expect people to come in and shop with you at that town. You have to have a sign that's advertising you're there and you're proud of it, and come on in. After all, we do live in the United States of America, and by golly, if you own a business there, you're darn proud of your business. You've worked really hard. You survived some things a lot of people can't survive. Come on in and spend a few bucks. We'll make you happy. Maybe you can get a Colorado t-shirt. Thank you for coming along today. Having you here with me always means so much. I'm glad that we can share the ride together. Always be kind. There's really no other way. I'll be back next Wednesday. Peace out. Hi, fill her up and check the oil, please. Nice little town you have here. I really like your sign. We saw her from a mile away.